I was just ecstatic to learn that I wasn't the one who messed up. A whole lot of y'all women gonna get pregnant at the after party.
Everybody was doing an electric slide all night. All night long in Chicago. Don't you watch news?
I do. I just didn't know if I don't know. How do you get along with Mike Pence?
I'm like that little albino bitch.
That's nice. That's nice. Well, did you want to...
There's a moment in Tracy Morgan's life that he can't forget. No matter how many stages he conquers, how many audiences give him standing ovations, how many awards he receives. It's the moment when he looked into his father's eyes and said he wished he were dead. If this story about Tracy Morgan moved you, inspired you, or even made you remember a moment in your life, subscribe to the channel now. Believe it or not, 94.8% of the people who watch these videos are not subscribed yet. If you're one of them, don't miss the next legends that shaped comedy, culture, and history. Support the channel with your free subscription. And let's keep these stories alive together. It was just another domestic fight, the kind of thing that happened every week in that cramped Bronx apartment. But this time, the words came out of his mouth like pure poison, and that same day, when the heat of anger had cooled, his father, James Morgan, came home holding a paper in his trembling hands and said with a broken voice, "You got your wish, son. I'm dying. I have AIDS." Tracy was 17 years old. It was 1985, and nobody really knew what AIDS was, but everyone knew it was a death sentence. His father had contracted the virus through dirty needles, those same heroin needles he'd been using since he came back from Vietnam, shattered inside, haunted by ghosts that never let him sleep at night. Tracy grew up hearing his father's footsteps wandering through the house in the darkness, a man who had been a helicopter gunner in the war, who couldn't count how many people he had killed, who came home with his soul torn to pieces, and who sought in drugs a way to silence the voices of the dead. And now Tracy, just a high school sophomore, would carry the weight of those words forever. You're not born, Tracy Morgan, without carrying the world on your back. He came into the world on November 10, 1968, in Brooklyn, grew up in the Tompkins Houses housing projects in Bedford-Stuyvesant, that piece of New York he himself called Ghetto, USA. His name was chosen by his father in honor of a platoon mate who embarked with him to Vietnam and was killed in action days later. Tracy carried the name of a dead man and would live surrounded by death. His older brother had cerebral palsy and spinal meningitis. His father was a heroin addict who left the family when Tracy was 6 years old. His mother, Alicia, worked as a homemaker and did what she could, but it wasn't enough. When Tracy was 13, he decided he wanted to really know his father and left home. He spent 2 days lost in the subway, without the courage to knock on the door, until he finally did it and lived the next 2 years with his father, traveling hours every day to go to school. When the courts asked who he wanted to live with, he chose his father. His mother cried like he had never seen before or after, and stopped talking to him. Abandonment became a language he knew fluently. Life in the projects wasn't life, it was survival. Tracy saw friends being killed, saw the neighborhood transform into the city's crack and heroin market, saw his own people becoming dealers, addicts, statistics. He also entered that game. When his father died from AIDS-related complications in November 1987, Tracy was 19, already married to his high school girlfriend Sabina, and father of 2 children. He dropped out of school just 4 credits short of graduating to care for his dying father, and when his father finally closed his eyes, Tracy was already living on welfare and selling crack on the streets. He admits he was the worst drug dealer you could imagine, that he organized meetings with the crackheads, that he didn't have the heart for it. But there was one thing he knew how to do: make people laugh. His best friend always said, "Tracy, man, you should be doing comedy." Tracy laughed, thought it was just talk. Until a week after those words, his best friend was murdered. Another body, another absence. And Tracy finally understood that death was the only constant in his life, and that laughter was the only weapon he had against it. He started doing stand-up on the streets, at any open mic stage that would accept him, at every comedy club that would give him 5 minutes. It was raw, it was intense, it was true. Tracy didn't make jokes about hypothetical situations. He made jokes about pain, about growing up where he grew up, about losing the people he loved, about being black in a country that never wanted him to be anything but a statistic. And people laughed, but they also cried because they saw something rare in him. Raw humanity, unfiltered. He performed at the Apollo Theater at the Uptown Comedy Club and started building a name. In 1994, he got his first television role as Hustle Man on Martin Lawrence's sitcom, Martin. It was a character who sold things from the hood, always greeting people with his signature, "What's happened, Chief?" and had a dog dressed as a rapper. It was funny, but it was also Tracy. It was his life transformed into entertainment. 2 years later, in 1996, he received the phone call that would change everything. Saturday Night Live wanted him to join the cast. SNL, the whitest comedy show in America. Tracy walked into that New York studio feeling the weight of the entire black community on his back. He said years later, his voice choked. "When I first got there, I felt socially pushed away, because it is like the whitest show in the world, and I didn't want no one to portray me in a way that wasn't true. It was like I had the whole black community on my back." He created characters that became iconic. Brian Fellow, the confident but clueless host of Brian Fellow's Safari Planet, and Astronaut Jones, a retro-style space adventurer. But no matter how funny he was, there was always that feeling of fighting for space, of having to prove he belonged there, of carrying the burden of representing an entire race. It was Lorne Michaels, the show's creator, who finally freed Tracy from that prison. In a conversation that changed everything, Lorne said, "Tracy, we didn't hire you because you're black. We hired you because you're funny." Those words broke the chains. Tracy could finally breathe. He spent 7 years on SNL, creating comedy moments that would live forever, but also fighting his own demons. Because behind the laughter, Tracy was drowning. Alcohol became his refuge, his crutch, his ruin. He was banned from several Hollywood nightclubs, had multiple drunk driving arrests, made unhinged appearances on live television and radio. When he left SNL in 2003, he created his own show, The Tracy Morgan Show, but it was canceled after just 1 season due to low ratings. His career was in free fall. He continued doing stand-up, participated in films, but the truth is Tracy was lost. Drinking too much, living too fast, running from ghosts that never stopped chasing. It was Tina Fey, his former SNL colleague, who gave him a lifeline, a role in her new series, 30 Rock. Tracy would play Tracy Jordan, a caricature of himself, an unpredictable comedy star who constantly tested the limits of the show's producer, Liz Lemon, played by Fey. It was art imitating life, and Tracy was brilliant. He received an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Comedy Series in 2009 and multiple nominations in the following years. The series lasted until 2013, and Tracy finally seemed to have found his place. He was doing stand-up specials, starring in comedy films alongside Adam Sandler, Eddie Murphy, and Will Ferrell, lending his voice to animations. He was at his peak. And then, in the early morning of June 7, 2014, everything collapsed. Tracy was returning from a performance at Dover Downs Hotel and Casino in Delaware, part of his Turn It Funny comedy tour. It was just after 1 in the morning, and he was in a Mercedes Sprinter minivan with 3 other comedians, including Harris Stanton, his assistant, and 2 limousine company employees, traveling on the New Jersey Turnpike near Cranberry, when a Walmart tractor trailer hit them from behind at high speed, causing a 6-vehicle chain reaction crash. The van overturned. James McNair, his longtime friend and collaborator, the 62-year-old comedian known as Jimmy Mack, died instantly. Tracy was airlifted to Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital in New Brunswick with a broken femur, broken nose, several broken ribs, and a traumatic brain injury. He underwent surgery on his leg the next day. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the fact that his friend was dead, and he, once again, had survived. Survivor's guilt, that old friend who had visited him since his best friend's death in adolescence, came back with full force. The recovery was brutal. Tracy spent over a year relearning to walk, dealing with constant headaches, nosebleeds, memory problems. He used a cane. His brain injury left him confused, forgetful. There were good days and bad days, but most were bad. He said in an emotional interview on NBC Today in June 2015, still leaning on his cane, his voice trembling, "I have my good days and my bad days where I forget things. There are times where I got the headaches and the nosebleeds." When asked about his return to comedy, he said, "I can't wait to get back on stage. But right now, my goal is just to heal and get better because I'm not 100% yet. And when I'm there, you'll know it. I'll get back to making you laugh." But the truth is, Tracy didn't know if he would return. The brain injury was severe. The doctors gave no guarantees. And beyond the physical pain, there was the unbearable emotional pain of having lost Jimmy Mack, of having survived once again when someone he loved didn't. It was his Vietnam again, as he himself described his best friend's death in adolescence. Survivor's guilt is a prison without walls, but Tracy Morgan is not a man who gives up. In September 2015, just 15 months after the accident, he made a surprise appearance at the 67th Emmy Awards and was received with a standing ovation that lasted minutes. Tears ran down his face and the faces of everyone in the audience. It was a moment of resurrection, of proof that the human spirit can endure the unendurable. In 2017, he released his stand-up special, Staying Alive, and the title said it all. He was alive. He was back. And he was funnier and more human than ever, because now every joke came from an even deeper place, from someone who had looked at death and decided to laugh at it. In 2018, he began starring in The Last OG on TBS, a series where he played an ex-convict trying to readjust to life after 15 years in prison. The series lasted 4 seasons until 2021. In 2019, he hosted the ESPYs in Los Angeles. In 2022, the New York Friars Club awarded him the Entertainment Icon Award, making him the first black recipient of the prestigious Comedy Award. But life never stops testing Tracy. In 2016, his ex-wife Sabina, his high school sweetheart with whom he had been married, the mother of his 3 children, died of cancer. Tracy was with her in the hospital the day she closed her eyes for the last time, and he held her hand and said, "I love you. I miss you, and please forgive me for any hurt I've ever caused you. I will see you again." It was another loss, another scar on the soul of a man who had lost so many people he loved. But Tracy learned that grief is not weakness. Grief is love with no place to go. And he transformed that love into art, into comedy, into truth. When you watch Tracy Morgan today, whether in his new show Crutch on Paramount Plus, where he plays a widowed father whose adult children move back home in Harlem, or in his stand-up performances, you're seeing more than a comedian. You're seeing a survivor. You're seeing someone who was born with the name of a dead man, who grew up surrounded by death, who sold crack to survive, who lost his father, his best friend, his colleagues, his ex-wife. You're seeing someone who suffered a traumatic brain injury and spent a year not knowing if he would walk or speak properly again, and who still chose to return to the stage. You're seeing someone who faced the systemic racism of an industry that didn't want to make room for black comedians, who had to carry the weight of representing an entire race on one of the whitest shows on American television, and who still found a way to be authentically himself. You're seeing resilience personified. Tracy Morgan once said, "Comedy saved my life." And it's not a metaphor, it's literal. Comedy saved him from the streets, from crack, from violence, from hopelessness. Comedy gave him purpose when his best friend was murdered. Comedy gave him an identity when he felt invisible. Comedy gave him a voice when society wanted him to stay silent. And after the accident, when doctors didn't know if he would ever be the same, it was comedy that pulled him back to life. Because laughing is the opposite of giving up. Laughing is an act of rebellion against emptiness. And Tracy Morgan has spent his entire life laughing in the face of death. There's a scene at the end of 30 Rock where the character Tracy Jordan says something that could have been written by Tracy Morgan himself. "I don't just want to be funny. I want to make people feel something." And that has always been Tracy's true mission. It wasn't just to make you laugh, it was to make you feel. It was to make you see that behind every joke there's a story of pain, of loss, of struggle. It was to make you understand that being a black comedian in America isn't just getting on stage and telling jokes. It's carrying the weight of generations of racism, of closed doors, of being judged not by your talent but by the color of your skin. It's having to be twice as funny to get half the recognition. It's knowing that every step you take is a step that opens the way for those who will come after. Tracy Morgan's legacy isn't just in the characters he created or the awards he won. It's in the raw and uncomfortable truth he always had the courage to tell. It's in the way he transformed trauma into art. It's in the way he taught a generation of comedians that you don't need to hide where you came from, that your pain is your strength, that authenticity is more powerful than perfection. It's in the fact that no matter how many times life knocked him down, he always got up, always came back to the stage, always chose laughter instead of silence. Tracy Morgan is living proof that you can be born in a place that wants you dead, lose almost everyone you love, have your body broken and your mind shattered, and still choose to live, still choose to laugh, still choose to matter. Today, when Tracy takes the stage, he's not just a comedian. He's a testament. He's proof that the human spirit is unbreakable. And when he makes the audience laugh until it hurts, when he tells his stories about growing up in the Bronx, about losing people, about surviving the impossible, he's not just entertaining, he's healing. If this story about Tracy Morgan moved you, inspired you, or even made you remember a moment in your life, subscribe to the channel now. Believe it or not, 94.8% of the people who watch these videos are not subscribed yet. If you're one of them, don't miss the next legends that shaped comedy, culture, and history. Support the channel with your free subscription, and let's keep these stories alive together. He's showing everyone who's suffering, everyone who's struggling, everyone who thinks they won't make it, that it's possible not just to survive, but to thrive. That your scars don't define you, they strengthen you. That laughter can exist alongside pain, and in fact needs to exist alongside pain. Because without darkness, we don't know how to appreciate light, and Tracy Morgan has spent enough time in the darkness to know exactly how bright the light can be.